In a distant corner of the galaxy, far beyond what humans could see with their telescopes, there existed an empire so vast and powerful that its name struck fear into anyone who heard it. This galactic empire ruled over countless planets, enforcing strict control through advanced technology and sheer military might. For centuries, they had expanded their territory without facing any real challenge. Their weapons were unmatched, their starships faster than anything else in the known universe, and their leaders considered themselves gods among lesser beings. But one day, something unusual happened, something that would shake the very foundation of this mighty empire. During routine exploration missions, one of their scout ships stumbled upon a small blue planet tucked away on the edge of a remote solar system. At first glance, it seemed unremarkable. The planet's surface was covered in oceans, forests, and sprawling cities made of materials that appeared primitive compared to the sleek metallic structures found across the empire. The scouts reported back to their superiors, describing Earth as a backward world with no apparent threat. They use combustion engines, one officer sneered during a briefing. Their communication systems are laughably slow, and there's nothing here worth our time. But then came the scans, deep space readings that revealed energy signatures unlike anything recorded in galactic history. These weren't just random fluctuations. They were deliberate patterns, pulsing with precision and purpose. It was almost as if someone, or something, was experimenting with forces beyond comprehension. Curiosity quickly turned into suspicion when several reconnaissance drones sent to investigate vanished without a trace. One moment, they were transmitting data. The next, silence. No wreckage, no distress signals, just emptiness. The Empire's scientists scrambled to make sense of it, but even their brightest minds couldn't explain how such primitive-looking beings could possess technology capable of neutralizing Imperial hardware. Was it some kind of natural phenomenon? Or was humanity hiding something? Back on Earth, people weren't entirely unaware of these cosmic visitors. In fact, humanity had been preparing for this moment for decades. Governments around the globe had secretly pooled resources to develop technologies designed not only to protect Earth, but also to ensure survival against potential extraterrestrial threats. Deep underground laboratories house projects that push the boundaries of science. Projects involving artificial intelligence, quantum mechanics, and energy manipulation. Some experiments succeeded, while others failed spectacularly, but each step brought humanity closer to mastering tools that could rival even the most advanced civilizations. When the Empire's probes disappeared, it wasn't due to luck or coincidence. Humanity had developed cloaking devices powered by dark matter, rendering entire fleets invisible to detection. They had also created defensive grids using particle beams that could slice through metal like butter. Yet despite these incredible achievements, Earth's leaders decided not to retaliate immediately. Instead, they chose to observe, gathering intelligence about their mysterious visitors before making any moves. Meanwhile, rumors spread throughout the Empire. Whispers reached the ears of ordinary citizens about a strange planet whose inhabitants defied logic. Stories circulated about ghost ships appearing out of nowhere and vanishing just as quickly. Even hardened soldiers began questioning whether conquering Earth was truly worth the risk. The fear started creeping into the hearts of those who once believed themselves invincible. And so the stage was set for an unprecedented confrontation. On one side stood the Galactic Empire, arrogant and confident in its dominance. On the other stood humanity, a species often underestimated but brimming with untapped potential. Neither side fully understood the other, yet both knew that this encounter would change everything. Little did the Empire realize that Earth wasn't merely defending itself, it was preparing to reveal secrets that would leave them speechless. As the Galactic Empire struggled to make sense of Earth's mysterious defenses, their leaders grew more desperate. They couldn't ignore the fact that this tiny blue planet had somehow managed to destroy their advanced probes without leaving a trace. It was clear now that humanity wasn't as primitive as they'd assumed. Something extraordinary was happening on Earth, something far beyond their understanding. Determined to uncover the truth, the Empire launched a daring mission. A team of elite scientists and spies was sent deep into Earth's orbit, equipped with cloaking technology designed to keep them hidden. Their goal was simple: infiltrate human systems, steal whatever secrets they could find, and return before anyone noticed. But what they discovered during their covert operation left them shaken to their core. The spies managed to hack into one of Earth's research facilities, a sprawling underground complex filled with machines unlike anything they had ever seen. There were devices capable of bending space and time, creating portals that allowed instant travel across vast distances. Other machines seemed to harness energy directly from the fabric of the universe itself, a generating power so immense it could light up entire cities for centuries. And then there were the weapons that didn't just destroy but unraveled matter at a molecular level, reducing entire structures to dust in seconds. At first, the spies thought these inventions were theoretical models, concepts still years away from being practical. But as they dug deeper, they realized the horrifying truth. Humanity wasn't just experimenting with these technologies, they were actively using them. Some of the tools had already been deployed in small-scale tests, while others were being refined for larger applications. The implications were staggering. If Earth could master such unimaginable forces, no empire, not even theirs, would stand a chance against them. But the real shock came when the spies stumbled upon something even more unsettling. Buried within the facility's archives was evidence of projects so classified that only a handful of humans knew about them. And these weren't just advancements in science or engineering. They were breakthroughs that redefined the very laws of physics. For example, one project involved creating artificial black holes, not as weapons, but as sources of infinite energy. Another focused on developing communication systems that operated faster than the speed of light, allowing instant contact between distant points in space. The spies barely had time to process what they'd found before alarms blared throughout the facility. When somehow Earth's security systems had detected their presence. Within moments, automated defenses sprang into action. Invisible barriers sealed off escape routes, while drones armed with plasma cannons descended from the ceiling. The spies fought back with everything they had, but it was useless. Every move they made was anticipated, Every strategy countered effortlessly. In the end, only fragments of data survived the chaos, smuggled out by a single operative who barely escaped with his life. When the stolen information reached the Empire's capital, it caused an uproar. Scientists pored over the data, trying to decipher how humanity had achieved such feats. Military commanders demanded answers, fearing that Earth might launch a preemptive strike. Even the Emperor himself was forced to acknowledge the gravity of the situation. For the first time in centuries, the Empire faced a threat it couldn't simply crush underfoot. And what unnerved them most was the realization that humanity's progress wasn't driven by desperation or fear. Unlike the Empire, which relied on conquest and exploitation to fuel its growth, Earth's innovations stem from curiosity and collaboration. People from all corners of the globe had come together, pooling their knowledge and resources to push the boundaries of what was possible. It wasn't about domination. It was about exploration, discovery, and the pursuit of a better future. When this revelation hit the Empire hard, they prided themselves on being the pinnacle of civilization. Yet here was a species proving that true greatness lay not in power, but in creativity and unity. The contrast was glaring, and it forced many within the Empire to question their own values. Was their way of life truly superior? Or had they become complacent, resting on laurels earned through oppression rather than innovation? Meanwhile, back on Earth, leaders remained calm despite knowing that their secrets were partially exposed. They understood that the Empire would react with fear and aggression, but they also knew that humanity held the upper hand. Decades of preparation had paid off, giving them not only the means to defend themselves, but also the confidence to face whatever challenges lay ahead. In secret meetings, strategists discussed the next steps. Should they reveal more of their capabilities to intimidate the Empire further? Or should they continue playing the long game, letting their enemies underestimate them until the right moment arrived? Whatever decision they made, one thing was certain: humanity was ready to protect its home, ready to prove its worth, and ready to show the galaxy that Earth wasn't just another planet. It was a beacon of hope and ingenuity. As news of Earth's technological marvels spread across the Empire, whispers of rebellion began to surface among oppressed planets. For years, these worlds had suffered under the Empire's iron grip, dreaming of freedom but lacking the means to fight back. Now, however, they saw a glimmer of hope. If a seemingly insignificant species like humanity could defy the Empire, then maybe liberation wasn't so far-fetched after all. And so the stage was set for a dramatic shift in the balance of power. The Galactic Empire, once untouchable, now found itself on shaky ground. Humanity, underestimated and overlooked, had emerged as a force to be reckoned with. The question was no longer whether Earth could survive, but how far its influence would reach. The Galactic Empire was not used to failure. For centuries, their dominance had gone unchallenged. When they wanted something, they took it, by force if necessary. But Earth was different. Every attempt to uncover its secrets ended in disaster. Probes disappeared, spies were captured or killed, and even their most advanced warships seemed powerless against humanity's mysterious defenses. It was becoming clear that brute strength alone wouldn't work here. Something else was needed, something smarter, more calculated. Frustrated but unwilling to admit defeat, the Empire decided to escalate their efforts. They assembled a massive fleet equipped with weapons capable of obliterating entire planets. This wasn't just a show of power, it was a message. The Empire wanted to remind humanity and anyone else watching that resistance was futile. If Earth refused to bow, it would be erased from existence. But humanity wasn't intimidated. Back on the blue planet, leaders gathered in secure bunkers deep beneath the surface. Around tables cluttered with maps, holograms, and endless cups of coffee, they planned their next move. Scientists, engineers, and military strategists worked side by side, pooling their expertise to counter the Empire's aggression. What made humanity unique wasn't just their technology, it was their ability to adapt. While the Empire relied on rigid hierarchies and outdated tactics, humans thrived on creativity and teamwork. As the Imperial fleet approached Earth's orbit, the planet remained eerily quiet. No panic, no chaos, just calm determination. On the surface, life continued as usual. People went to work, children played in parks, and families shared meals together. To an outsider, it might have seemed like humanity didn't realize the danger looming overhead. But beneath the surface, every resource was mobilized. Underground shelters were stocked with supplies, communication networks were fortified, and defense systems hummed with readiness. When the Empire finally launched its attack, they expected swift victory. Their ships unleashed barrages of energy beams and missiles, in aiming to cripple Earth's infrastructure before retaliation could begin. But instead of destruction, they encountered nothing. The attacks passed through empty air, hitting targets that weren't there. Cities vanished from sight, replaced by illusions so convincing that even the Empire's sensors couldn't distinguish reality from deception. Confusion rippled through the fleet. How could this be happening? Was it some kind of trick? Before they could regroup, another wave of surprises struck. Ships at the rear of the formation suddenly reported malfunctions. Engines sputtered, weapons jammed, and navigation systems went haywire. Pilots scrambled to regain control, but it was too late. One by one, vessels began dropping out of formation, drifting helplessly in space. What the Empire didn't know was that humanity had deployed adaptive AI networks to counter their assault. These systems analyzed enemy movements in real time, predicting strategies and neutralizing threats before they materialized. Invisible drones patrolled the battlefield, disabling key components of Imperial ships with surgical precision. Meanwhile, cloaking devices rendered entire squadrons invisible, allowing them to slip past enemy lines undetected. The turning point came when a group of Earth's stealth fighters executed a daring maneuver. Using quantum teleportation technology, they bypassed the Empire's front lines and reappeared directly above the flagship, a colossal vessel bristling with cannons and shield generators. In seconds, they unleashed a barrage of particle beams, targeting critical systems. The flagship's shields flickered and collapsed, leaving it vulnerable. Though the ship didn't explode, the message was clear. Humanity could strike anywhere, anytime, and there was nothing the Empire could do to stop them. Back on Earth, People watched live feeds of the battle with a mix of awe and relief. News outlets broadcast updates around the clock, showing footage of Imperial ships retreating in disarray. Social media buzzed with pride as ordinary citizens celebrated the ingenuity and resilience of their species. Memes and hashtags spread like wildfire, poking fun at the Empire's arrogance. "Guess size doesn't matter," read one viral post, accompanied by a picture of Earth dwarfed by the Empire's massive fleet. For the Empire, however, the humiliation was unbearable. Leaders convened emergency meetings, demanding explanations for the catastrophic failure. Generals pointed fingers at scientists, who blamed engineers, who accused spies of incompetence. Tempers flared, alliances fractured, and morale plummeted. For the first time in generations, cracks began to form in the Empire's foundation. Yet amidst the chaos, a few voices called for restraint. Some advisors argued that attacking Earth again would only lead to further losses. Instead, they suggested a different approach: diplomacy. It was a radical idea, especially coming from a civilization built on conquest. But desperation has a way of making people reconsider their options. Reluctantly, the Emperor agreed to send envoys to negotiate with humanity. However, he did so with a heavy heart, knowing full well that this decision marked a turning point. By reaching out to Earth, the Empire was admitting weakness, a concept alien to their culture. Still, they had little choice. Continuing the fight would drain resources, destabilize the Empire, and embolden rebellious factions within their own ranks. On Earth, news of the diplomatic mission sparked heated debates. Some believed it was a trap, a ploy to buy time while the Empire regrouped. Others saw it as an opportunity to end hostilities without further bloodshed. Ultimately, the decision rested with humanity's leaders, who chose to accept the offer, but on their terms. Preparations for the meeting were meticulous. Security teams scoured every detail, ensuring no hidden threats slipped through. Scientists developed translation devices to bridge the language gap, while cultural experts crafted protocols to avoid misunderstandings. Despite the tension, there was a sense of optimism in the air. For all its challenges, humanity had always been defined by its capacity for hope, even in the face of overwhelming odds, and they refused to give up. When the Empire's delegation arrived, they found themselves greeted not with hostility, but with hospitality. Representatives from Earth welcomed them aboard a floating platform stationed in orbit, offering refreshments and polite conversation. The contrast between the two sides was striking. Where the Empire exuded arrogance and superiority, humanity radiated humility and curiosity. It was a subtle but powerful statement. We may be small, but we are strong, not because of our weapons, but because of our values. Negotiations began cautiously, with both parties testing the waters. The Empire proposed a trade agreement, offering access to their vast resources in exchange for Earth's technological secrets. Humanity listened patiently, then countered with a bold proposal of their own. They offered collaboration, but only if the Empire agreed to dismantle its oppressive regimes and embrace equality among all species. And the Empire balked at the suggestion. Such a demand was unprecedented, almost insulting. Yet as discussions dragged on, they realized humanity wasn't bluffing. Behind closed doors, leaders debated the pros and cons of accepting these terms. Could they afford to walk away empty-handed? Or was compromise the only path forward? While the talks continued, whispers of rebellion spread across the galaxy. Oppressed planets, inspired by Earth's defiance, began rising up against their imperial overlords. Riots erupted in city squares, sabotage crippled supply chains, and dissent grew louder by the day. For the first time, the Empire faced unrest on multiple fronts, a direct result of humanity's actions. And so, the stage was set for a pivotal moment. Would the Empire cling to its old ways, risking collapse under the weight of its own hubris? Or would it embrace change, forging a new future alongside humanity? Whatever happened next, and one thing was certain, Earth had proven that true strength lies not in domination, but in the courage to stand up for what is right. The negotiations between Earth and the Galactic Empire were unlike anything either side had experienced before. For the Empire, diplomacy was a foreign concept. They were used to dictating terms, not discussing them. Their envoys entered the talks with an air of superiority, expecting humanity to grovel for peace. But what they encountered instead was a calm, confident group of representatives who refused to be intimidated. Humanity wasn't begging, it was offering a partnership, but on its own terms. At first, the Empire dismissed these conditions as absurd. Dismantle their oppressive regimes, share resources equally among all species. These ideas went against everything the Empire stood for. To them, power was meant to be hoarded, not distributed. Control was their currency, and relinquishing it seemed unthinkable. Yet as the discussions dragged on, cracks began to form in their resolve. The Empire's leaders couldn't ignore the growing unrest within their own territories, or the fact that humanity held all the cards. Back on Earth, people followed the negotiations closely. News outlets provided live updates, breaking down complex agreements into simple language everyone could understand. Social media buzzed with opinions, memes, and debates. Some argued that humanity should demand even more concessions, while others believed compromise was necessary to avoid further conflict. Despite differing views, there was one thing everyone agreed on. Earth had earned the right to dictate the terms. After decades of preparation and sacrifice, humanity finally had the upper hand. During one particularly tense session, the Empire's lead negotiator leaned forward, his voice dripping with frustration. "You asked too much," he said, glaring at Earth's representatives. "Our way has worked for centuries. Why should we change now?" A soft chuckle rippled through the human delegation. One of the senior advisors smiled gently, leaning back in her chair. "Your way has worked, for you," she replied. "But look where it's gotten you. Your empire is crumbling. Your people are rising up. And your fleet is no match for our technology. If you want to survive, you need to adapt." Her words struck a nerve. The negotiator opened his mouth to argue, but stopped himself. He glanced around the room, noticing the subtle nods of agreement from his own team. Deep down, they knew she was right. The Empire's old ways were unsustainable. Change wasn't just an option, it was a necessity. As the days turned into weeks, the negotiations grew more intense. Humanity presented detailed proposals outlining how the Empire could transition to a fairer system. They suggested reforms to abolish slavery, redistribute wealth, and grant autonomy to oppressed planets. At the same time, they offered assistance, sharing knowledge and resources to help the empire rebuild without losing its identity. It was a bold move, one that required trust on both sides. But trust didn't come easily. The empire's leaders struggled to wrap their heads around the idea of equality. For generations, they had viewed themselves as superior beings, destined to rule over lesser species. Accepting humanity's proposal meant admitting they weren't infallible, a bitter pill to swallow. Still, the alternative was worse. Refusing to cooperate would mean continued rebellion, dwindling resources, and the ever-present threat of Earth's unimaginable weapons. Meanwhile, whispers of hope spread across the galaxy. Oppressed planets watched the negotiations unfold with bated breath. For years, they had suffered under the Empire's iron grip, dreaming of freedom, but lacking the means to fight back. Now, thanks to humanity's defiance, they saw a chance to break free. The protests erupted in city squares, demanding justice and reform. Underground networks shared blueprints for homemade devices inspired by Earth's technology, empowering rebels to challenge imperial forces. On one distant colony, a group of miners staged a massive strike, refusing to extract rare minerals until their demands were met. On another world, farmers sabotaged supply chains, cutting off food shipments to imperial strongholds. Even soldiers within the Empire's ranks began questioning their loyalty. Why die for a cause that only benefited the elite? Slowly but surely, the Empire's grip began to loosen. Back at the negotiating table, tensions reached a boiling point. The Empire's emperor himself intervened, delivering a fiery speech via hologram. "We will not bow to your demand," he declared, his voice echoing through the chamber. "The Empire has stood for millennia. We will not fall because of your interference." Humanity's response was unexpected and devastating. Without uttering a single word, their representatives activated a display screen, projecting footage of recent uprisings across the galaxy. Planets in chaos, citizens overthrowing governors, entire fleets abandoning their posts. It was a portrait of an empire on the brink of collapse. The message was clear. This wasn't about Earth's interference. This was about the Empire's refusal to evolve. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then slowly the Emperor's image flickered and disappeared. When the negotiators reconvened hours later, their tone had shifted. Gone was the arrogance and hostility. In its place was a grudging acknowledgement of reality. They agreed to consider humanity's proposals, but only if certain safeguards were put in place. Humanity accepted the compromise, knowing it was a step in the right direction. Over the following weeks, teams of scientists, engineers, and diplomats worked tirelessly to draft a formal agreement. The document outlined specific steps the Empire would take to reform its systems, along with timelines and accountability measures. In return, humanity promised to share select technologies, enough to stabilize the Empire, but not enough to threaten Earth's security. When the final treaty was signed, it marked a historic turning point. For the first time in its existence, the Galactic Empire committed to change. Leaders vowed to dismantle oppressive regimes, promote equality, and foster cooperation among all species. It was a monumental shift, one driven not by force, but by inspiration. On Earth, celebrations erupted worldwide. Cities lit up with fireworks, streets filled with cheering crowds, and social media overflowed with messages of gratitude. People hugged strangers, danced in public squares, and sang songs of unity. It was a moment of pure joy, a reminder of what humanity could achieve when it came together. Yet amidst the festivities, there was also reflection. Humanity understood that this victory wasn't just about defeating an enemy. It was about proving that strength lies in compassion, innovation, and collaboration. By standing firm in its values, Earth had inspired an entire galaxy to dream of a better future. As news of the treaty spread, oppressed planets rejoiced. For many, it was the first time they dared to imagine life beyond fear and servitude. Leaders emerged from hiding, rallying their people to rebuild their worlds. Artists painted murals celebrating freedom, musicians composed anthems of hope, and writers documented the dawn of a new era. Even within the empire, attitudes began to shift. Soldiers who once enforced tyranny now found themselves protecting civilians. Governors who once exploited resources started investing in communities. And though progress was slow and challenges remained, the seeds of change had been planted. And so, the galaxy entered a fragile but promising new chapter. Humanity's actions had proven that even the mightiest empires could be humbled, not through violence but through vision. By choosing to lead with wisdom rather than domination, Earth had set an example for the cosmos to follow. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in centuries, the stars seemed a little brighter, where the signing of the treaty marked the beginning of a new era, not just for the Galactic Empire, but for the entire galaxy. For decades, humanity had prepared for this moment, knowing that their actions would ripple far beyond Earth's borders. What they hadn't anticipated was just how profound those ripples would be. The reforms sparked by the agreement didn't happen overnight, but slowly, steadily, the galaxy began to transform. On Earth, a life returned to normal, or as normal as it could be after such an extraordinary event. People went back to their routines, resuming jobs, hobbies, and family gatherings. Yet there was an undeniable sense of pride in the air. Humanity had faced one of the most powerful civilizations in existence and emerged victorious, not through brute force, but through ingenuity, unity, and a commitment to doing what was right. It was a reminder that even the smallest actions could have monumental consequences. In schools, teachers incorporated lessons about the empire's defeat into their curriculums. Students learned about the technologies that gave Earth its edge, the strategies that outsmarted the empire's fleet, and the values that guided humanity's decisions. Museums hosted exhibits showcasing artifacts from the conflict, damaged imperial drones, fragments of cloaking devices, and holographic recordings of key moments. These displays weren't meant to glorify war. Instead, they served as reminders of what could be achieved when people worked together toward a common goal. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, oppressed planets began rebuilding their societies. Freed from the Empire's tyranny, they embraced newfound opportunities with enthusiasm. Farmers planted crops without fear of confiscation. Artists created works celebrating freedom, and scientists pursued research without restriction. Entire worlds flourished as resources once hoarded by the elite were redistributed among the population. It was messy and imperfect, but it was progress, and that was enough. The empire itself underwent a painful yet necessary transformation. Leaders who had clung to power for centuries stepped down, making way for younger voices eager to chart a different course. Military bases were converted into research facilities, weapons factories repurposed to produce tools for exploration and innovation. Even the empire's sprawling capital city, once a symbol of oppression, became a hub of collaboration. Delegations from across the galaxy traveled there to share ideas, forge alliances, and celebrate milestones. Humanity played a crucial role in this transition. Teams of engineers, doctors, and educators volunteered to assist struggling planets, offering expertise and support where it was needed most. They helped design sustainable energy systems, improve healthcare infrastructure, and develop communication networks that connected distant communities. But perhaps their greatest contribution was sharing knowledge, not just about technology, but about empathy, cooperation, and resilience. Of course, not everyone welcomed these changes. Some within the empire resisted reform, clinging to old beliefs and traditions. Secret factions plotted to overthrow the new leadership and hoping to restore the glory days of domination. Others simply struggled to adapt, finding it difficult to let go of habits ingrained over generations. Change is never easy, especially when it challenges deeply held convictions. But humanity remained patient, understanding that healing takes time. One of the most significant developments during this period was the formation of the Galactic Alliance, a coalition of planets united by shared goals and mutual respect. While humanity took a leading role in shaping its foundation, advocating for principles like equality, transparency, and accountability. The alliance wasn't perfect. It faced disagreements, setbacks, and occasional conflicts, but it represented a step forward. For the first time in history, species from across the galaxy came together not as conquerors or subjects, but as equals. As part of the alliance, Earth continued to safeguard its most advanced secrets. While humanity shared many of its innovations, certain technologies remained off limits. Quantum teleportation, artificial black holes, and faster-than-light communication systems were deemed too dangerous to fall into the wrong hands. Instead, Earth focused on teaching others how to think creatively, solve problems collaboratively, and approach challenges with courage and determination. After all, tools are only as good as the people wielding them. Over time, the stories of Earth's triumph spread throughout the galaxy, becoming legends passed down through generations. Poets wrote epic verses praising humanity's bravery, musicians composed symphonies inspired by their ingenuity, and historians documented every detail of the conflict. To some, Earth became a symbol of hope, a reminder that even the smallest planet could make a difference. To others, it served as a cautionary tale, illustrating the dangers of underestimating those who appear weak. But perhaps the most lasting impact was the shift in perspective. Before encountering Earth, the Empire had viewed strength as synonymous with conquest. Power was measured by the number of planets controlled, the size of armies amassed, and the wealth accumulated. Now they understood that true strength lies in something far more valuable. the ability to inspire change. By choosing compassion over cruelty, collaboration over competition, and innovation over stagnation, humanity had redefined what it meant to lead. Back on Earth, leaders reflected on the journey that brought them here. They knew the road ahead wouldn't always be smooth. Challenges would arise, mistakes would be made, and sacrifices would need to be endured. But they also knew that humanity had proven itself capable of greatness, not because of its weapons or wealth, but because of its heart. It was this quality above all else that set Earth apart. Years later, and when ambassadors from distant galaxies visited Earth for the first time, they often remarked on its beauty. The blue oceans, green forests, and vibrant cities left a lasting impression. But what struck them most was the spirit of the people. Despite everything they had faced, the threats, the battles, the uncertainty, they remained hopeful. They believed in a better future, not just for themselves, but for everyone. And so the galaxy entered a new chapter, one defined not by fear or domination, but by possibility. Humanity's actions had ignited a spark, lighting the way for others to follow. Wars ended, alliances formed, and dreams once thought impossible became reality. It was proof that even in the vastness of space, no act of kindness goes unnoticed, no effort wasted, and no voice unheard. As ships departed Earth's orbit, carrying diplomats, scientists, and explorers to distant corners of the universe, humanity looked to the stars with quiet confidence. When they had faced the unimaginable and emerged stronger, they had inspired a galaxy to dream bigger, reach further, and believe in the power of unity. And though the journey was far from over, they knew one thing for certain: the best was yet to come.